In the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest, where cell signals die and civilization feels like a distant memory, 5 friends thought they'd found the perfect escape. But when a hand-carved figurine appeared inside their locked cabin, a cabin they were certain was empty, they realized something had been watching them from the shadows, and it had already been inside. The cabin listing looked perfect. Weathered cedar walls, a stone fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking dense forest, and complete isolation 20 miles from the nearest town. For Maya, Jordan, Ethan, Casey, and Liv, it was exactly what they needed. A long weekend away from deadlines, traffic, and the suffocating connectivity of city life. The property boasted modern security features too. Motion sensor lights, outdoor cameras, and a keypad entry system. The host's reviews were glowing, with guests praising the tranquility and the feeling of being truly alone with nature. As they arrived on that crisp October afternoon, the autumn light filtering through dowling Douglas firs, none of them noticed the small details that should have raised alarm. The faint trail through the underbrush leading away from the back of the property, the way the forest seemed unusually silent, or the odd statement in the guestbook's most recent entry, written in shaky handwriting. "Beautiful place," felt like someone was looking after us the whole time. The gravel crunching under their tires was the only sound for miles as Maya turned down the narrow forest road. Tall evergreens pressed in from both sides, their branches forming a canopy that swallowed the afternoon sun. In the passenger seat, Jordan checked his phone one last time before the signal disappeared completely. "This is it," he said, grinning, "off the grid for 3 whole days." Behind them, Ethan, Casey, and Liv were already taking photos through the SUV windows, capturing the moss-covered trees and the occasional glimpse of mountains in the distance. When the cabin finally emerged from the woods, they all fell silent. It was more beautiful than the pictures. Rustic, but clearly well-maintained, with a wraparound porch and large windows that promised stunning views. Maya parked near the front steps. The host had texted the lockbox code that morning, and within minutes they were inside, exploring the open-concept living space with its vaulted ceilings and the cozy loft bedrooms upstairs. Everything smelled of cedar and wood smoke. "Check this out," Ethan called from the back door. He'd found a fire pit, a large stone circle surrounded by Adirondack chairs positioned at the edge of the tree line. Beyond it, the forest stretched endlessly into shadow. They spent the afternoon settling in, claiming bedrooms, and preparing for their first night. As dusk approached, Casey suggested they christened a fire pit properly. Soon, flames were crackling against the cooling air, and they sat wrapped in blankets, passing around a bottle of wine and sharing stories. That's when the motion sensor light first flickered on. It was mounted on the porch corner, suddenly flooding the side yard with harsh white light. They all turned to look, but saw nothing, just trees and darkness beyond the illuminated circle. "Probably a deer," Liv said, shrugging. The light clicked off after 30 seconds. They returned to their conversation, laughing about old college memories. But over the next hour, the light triggered 4 more times. Each time, they looked. Each time, nothing. "Those sensors are sensitive. Could be moths, wind, moving branches, anything." As the fire burned low, Maya volunteered to grab more drinks from inside. She crossed the dark yard, climbed the porch steps, and pushed through the back door into the kitchen. The interior lights were off. They'd left only the living room lamp on, but enough moonlight spilled through the windows for her to navigate to the refrigerator. That's when she saw it. On the counter, directly in the center, sat a small wooden figurine. It was crudely carved, about 4 inches tall, depicting a human form with its arms raised above its head. The wood was dark, old-looking, and there was something unsettling about the proportions, the head slightly too large, the limbs too thin. Maya's breath caught. Her hand trembled as she reached for the light switch. They hadn't brought any figurines, and an hour ago, when she'd been in this kitchen making sandwiches, the counter had been completely empty. Maybe the host left it as a decoration. Casey's voice was uncertain as the five of them stood crowded in the kitchen, staring at the wooden figure under the bright overhead lights. "No." Maya shook her head firmly. "I made sandwiches here at 6 o'clock. The counter was clear. I would have seen this." "Could one of us have brought it in as a joke?" Liv suggested, but even as she spoke, everyone was shaking their heads. The figurine was strange, unwelcoming, not the kind of thing anyone would joke about. Jordan picked it up, turning it over in his hands. On the bottom, carved in tiny letters, was a single word: watching. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Check the cameras," Ethan said suddenly. "The host said there's one on the front porch and one on the back. We can see if anyone came up to the house." They huddled around Jordan's laptop as he logged into the security system, using the credentials from the welcome packet. The back camera had motion-triggered recordings stored in the cloud. Jordan scrolled through the timeline, finding the segment from the past 2 hours. The video began with normal footage, their group sitting around the fire, talking and laughing, clearly visible in the flickering orange light. Then, at 8:47 p.m., the motion light activated. The camera had a clear view of the porch and part of the side yard. For 5 seconds, nothing appeared unusual. Then, as they watched in growing horror, a figure emerged from the tree line. It moved with unnatural stillness, covered head to toe in a ghillie suit, camouflage made of forest debris, burlap strips, and dried leaves. The figure was perfectly blended with the environment. If it had remained still, they never would have spotted it. But it didn't remain still. It walked directly toward the camera with purposeful steps. When it reached the porch, just a few feet from the lens, it stopped and stared. The face was obscured by the camouflage netting, but they could see eyes, dark, unblinking eyes, fixed directly on the camera. The figure didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't breathe visibly. It simply stood there, watching, for what the timestamp revealed was 10 full minutes. "Oh my God," Liv whispered. "We were right there by the fire." At 8:58 p.m., the figure moved again. It stepped out of frame to the left, toward the back door. 30 seconds later, the camera angle showed the door, which they now realized they'd left unlocked, slowly opening. The figure slipped inside. Jordan fast-forwarded. At 9:01 p.m., exactly 3 minutes later, the figure emerged, climbed off the porch, and walked calmly back into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. "That's when I came inside for drinks," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "It was already gone, but it left..." She looked at the figurine, now sitting on the table between them. "It left that for us to find." Jordan was already grabbing his phone. "We're calling the police, and we're leaving, now." But when Jordan pulled up his contacts, his face went pale. "There's no signal. There hasn't been since we arrived." The cabin suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. Through the large windows, the forest that had seemed peaceful hours ago now looked menacing, an endless wall of darkness where anything could be hiding. "Keys," Ethan said, his voice sharp with urgency. "Where are the car keys?" Maya was already moving, dumping her purse on the couch. Jordan grabbed his jacket, padding pockets. Within seconds, Casey held up the key fob. "Got them. Let's go. Leave everything. We can get it later." They moved as a group toward the front door, nobody willing to be left behind even for a second. Jordan grabbed a fire poker from beside the fireplace, the only weapon-like object in sight. Ethan kept his phone raised, flashlight on, sweeping it across the dark windows as if expecting to see that ghillie-suited figure pressed against the glass. The porch was empty when they burst outside. Their SUV sat exactly where they'd parked it, looking normal, safe, like a portal back to civilization. Casey hit the unlock button and they rushed forward. Maya reached the driver's door first and yanked it open. She jammed the key in the ignition and turned. Nothing. Not even a click. No dashboard lights. No sound at all. "No, no, no," she breathed, turning the key again and again. Dead silence. "Try it again," Liv urged, her voice climbing toward panic. Jordan was already moving around to the front of the vehicle. He pulled out his phone, using the flashlight to illuminate the engine compartment, and popped the hood. What he saw made his stomach drop. "The battery cables," he said flatly. "They're disconnected, both of them. Someone unhooked the battery." The group stood frozen in the driveway, the reality settling over them like ice water. This wasn't random. This wasn't a vagrant or a confused neighbor. Someone had watched them arrive, watched them settle in, waited until they were distracted by the fire, and methodically disabled their only way out. "The host," Maya said suddenly. "We need to contact the host through the app. They can call the police for us. Send help." Back inside, they locked every door, checked every window latch, and pulled all the curtains closed. Jordan opened the rental app on his laptop, navigating to the message center. His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Emergency. Someone broke into the cabin. We have video evidence. Our car has been sabotaged. No cell service. Please call police immediately. Send help to 4156 Forest Ridge Road." He hit send, and they all stared at the screen, waiting for the message status to change from sending to delivered. It didn't. The Wi-Fi icon in the corner of the screen showed full bars, but the message wouldn't go through. Jordan refreshed the page, tried again. Nothing. "The router," Liv said, pointing to the device on the shelf. "Its lights were blinking normally. The internet is working. Why won't the message send?" Then Casey noticed something that made her blood run cold. "Look at the timestamp on the last message from the host," she whispered. They all leaned in. The welcome message with the lockbox code had been sent at 2:47 p.m. that afternoon, but beneath it, in smaller gray text, was a status update that none of them had noticed before. "Host account suspended, pending investigation." "What does that mean?" Liv's voice cracked. "Suspended?" Jordan clicked frantically through the app, trying to access the host's profile, previous reviews, any information at all. But every page that should have shown details about the property owner instead displayed the same message. "This account is currently under review." "This can't be happening," Maya said, pacing the living room. "People don't just get their accounts suspended for no reason. What if this property isn't even supposed to be rented right now?" Ethan was already moving toward the bookshelf where they'd seen the guest book earlier. He flipped it open, scanning the entries. Most were pleasant, generic comments about the peaceful setting and comfortable beds, but as he turned back through earlier pages, weeks, then months old, certain phrases began to stand out. "Felt like we were being watched, but maybe just wildlife. Strange noises at night. Host said it was just the forest settling. Found our luggage moved when we know we left it by the door." And then, from 4 months ago, an entry that had been partially scribbled out but was still legible. "Do not stay here. We saw someone in the woods. Host denied everything. Police found nothing." The rest was obliterated by heavy black ink. "We need to barricade ourselves in," Jordan said, slamming the guest book shut. "Push furniture against the doors. Stay together. Wait until sunrise, then hike out to the main road." They worked quickly, adrenaline overriding fear. The heavy oak dining table went against the back door. The couch blocked the front entrance. They checked the loft bedrooms, making sure all those windows were locked, then decided to stay downstairs where they could watch all entry points. The grandfather clock in the corner read 11:43 p.m. Sunrise was at least 8 hours away. They sat in the living room, lights blazing, the pyre poker and 2 kitchen knives distributed among them. Every creak of the old cabin made them jump. The wind picked up outside, making the trees groan and scratch against the roof. At 11:17 p.m., the motion light triggered again. They all saw it through the crack in the curtains, the sudden flood of white light illuminating the side yard. But this time, when Jordan carefully peered out, he saw something that made his breath stop. There were 3 figures at the edge of the tree line, all wearing ghillie suits, all perfectly still. All of them facing the cabin. As he watched, unable to move or speak, the figures began walking forward in perfect synchronization. Not rushing, not sneaking, just walking steadily toward the cabin as if they had every right to be there. "There's more than one," Jordan managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. "There are 3 of them, and they're coming." The front door handle began to rattle, then the back door. Then, impossibly, they heard footsteps on the porch above them, someone walking across the roof. Whatever was outside had surrounded them completely. The night stretched into an eternity of terror. The rattling stopped after 15 minutes, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. They took turns watching the windows, though the curtains stayed drawn. Nobody slept. Nobody could. Liv kept checking her phone obsessively, still no signal. Maya had found a landline phone jack in the kitchen, but no actual phone connected to it. They were cut off completely, exactly as someone had planned. "Why are they just waiting?" Casey whispered around 3 a.m. "Why not force their way in?" "Because they don't need to," Ethan said grimly. "They know we can't leave. They're in no hurry." Jordan had been studying the cabin layout, looking for any advantage. "When it gets light, we go out the loft window on the east side. There's a lower roof section there. We can drop to the ground, stay low, and head through the forest perpendicular to the driveway. If we can make it to the main road, we can flag down a car." "If there are cars," Maya said. "This road was empty for 40 minutes when we drove in. It's better than staying here." As the darkness finally began to thin, giving way to the gray pre-dawn light, they gathered their courage. Jordan led the way upstairs, moving quietly despite the barricades they'd placed. The east loft window looked out over a section of roof, just as he'd remembered. He carefully unlocked it and pushed it open, wincing at the slight creak. Cool morning air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The forest was visible below, less menacing in the growing light, but still dense enough to hide anything. "I don't see anyone," Jordan whispered. "Let's move fast. Maya, you're last. Close the window behind us so they don't know our exit route right away." One by one, they climbed through. Jordan dropped to the lower roof section, then to the ground. He helped the others down. When Maya landed beside them, they crouched low and moved quickly into the tree line, away from the driveway, away from whatever had held them captive all night. They moved through the forest for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Branches scraped their faces, their breath came in ragged gasps, but nobody looked back. When they finally reached the main road, the pavement beneath their feet felt like salvation. The sun was fully up now, normal and real. A logging truck appeared around the bend, and they flagged it down frantically. The driver, a weathered man in his 60s, looked alarmed at their appearance, pale, wild-eyed, scratched from the forest. "Please," Maya gasped, "we need the police. Someone, something at the cabin back there." "What cabin?" the driver asked, confused. "There ain't been a rentable cabin on Forest Ridge Road in over 3 years, not since the last owner disappeared and the property went into probate." They all stared at him, unable to process what he'd just said. "You kids need to get in. Let's get you to town." The Pinewood Sheriff's Station was small. Just 4 desks and a holding cell in a building that had probably been there since the 1970s. Deputy Marshal was young, professional, and clearly trying to take them seriously, despite his obvious skepticism. "So you rented this cabin through which service?" he asked, pen poised over his notepad. Jordan pulled up the app on his laptop, but when the page loaded, his face went pale. Where the listing for the cabin had been, the photos, the description, the reviews, there was now just an error message. "Property not found." "It was here," Jordan insisted, clicking frantically. "The whole listing, the host profile, everything." "Do you have the confirmation email?" Deputy Marshal asked. Maya pulled up her email app and searched. Nothing. No confirmation, no booking receipt, no welcome message with the lockbox code. It was as if the reservation had never existed. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I paid $1,200 for 3 nights. The charge should be on my credit card." She pulled up her banking app. The others watched over her shoulder as she scrolled through recent transactions. Gas from yesterday, coffee 2 days ago, grocery store, but no charge from any rental platform, no $1,200 debit anywhere. "What about the video?" Ethan said urgently. "We all saw it, the figure in the ghillie suit. It's on the cabin's security system." Jordan navigated to the cloud storage for the cameras, using the credentials they'd found in the welcome packet at the cabin. The login worked, But when the footage library loaded, it was completely empty. No recordings from the previous night. No recordings at all. "This isn't possible," Jordan said, his voice rising. "We all watched it together. The figure stood there for 10 minutes. We saw it enter the cabin." Deputy Marshal's expression had shifted from professional concern to something closer to pity. "Look, I believe you kids experienced something traumatic out there, but right now I've got no property address, no property owner, no reservation, no video evidence, and you said yourself you can't tell me the exact location because you drove there using GPS directions that are now gone." "The wooden figurine," Liv said suddenly. "We left it on the kitchen table. If you send someone to the cabin, it'll still be there. It had the word 'watching' carved on the bottom." "Can you take us back there?" Maya pleaded. "We can show you. The barricades we built, the disconnected battery cables, the guest book with the warnings." Marshall sighed and stood. "I'll drive out to Forest Ridge Road and see what I can find. But folks, that area has been county dispute territory for years. Most of those old logging properties are abandoned or posted. You might have been squatting in a condemned building for all we know." He paused at the door. "And sometimes, the isolation out there, it plays tricks on people's minds, especially at night. Makes you see things that aren't really there." After he left, the 5 of them sat in silence. "We all saw the same things," Casey finally said. "All of us, together." So either it was real, or something made us all hallucinate the exact same nightmare. Neither option was comforting. Maya hadn't returned to the Pacific Northwest since that weekend. None of them had. The friend group that had once been inseparable now barely texted. Nobody wanted to talk about it, but none of them could talk about anything else, so they simply stopped communicating. She was in her apartment in Seattle, trying to work on a design project, when her phone buzzed with a notification. An email from an address she didn't recognize. Forest Watcher at... Her hand trembled as she opened it. There was no message, just an attached image. She almost deleted it without looking, almost, but something made her click. The photo filled her screen. It was recent. She could tell by the spring blossoms on the trees in the background. It showed a cabin. The cabin. Same wraparound porch, same stone fire pit, same positioning at the edge of the forest. But that wasn't what made her gasp. In the foreground of the photo, sitting around the fire pit exactly as her group had done, were 5 different people, young, laughing, drinking, completely unaware. And standing at the tree line behind them, barely visible in the shadows but unmistakable once you saw it, was a figure in a ghillie suit, watching. Maya's phone buzzed again. Another email, another photo. Different people, different season, judging by the snow on the ground, winter, but the same cabin, the same fire pit, and again, in the background, the Watcher. A third email, a fourth, a fifth, different groups, different years based on the clothing styles and the aging of the cabin itself. Some photos looked recent, some looked decades old, printed and then photographed again, the colors faded and saturated in that distinctive way of 1980s film. In every single photo, somewhere in the frame, was the figure watching. The final email contained no photo, just text. "You were never the first. You won't be the last. The woods are patient. The woods remember, and we are always watching. The listing will appear again soon, under a different name, a different platform, but always the same place, always the same invitation. Thank you for being such good guests." The hosts. Maya's laptop chimed with a notification. Almost reflexively, she clicked it. A rental platform she'd never heard of, showing her a targeted advertisement based on her search history. Exclusive mountain retreat, just listed, secluded cabin in the breathtaking Pacific Northwest, perfect for groups, highly rated, modern security features. Book now for your ultimate escape into nature. The photos showed a beautiful cedar cabin with a stone fire pit surrounded by towering evergreens. It was the same cabin, The listing showed it had 127 five-star reviews, a Superhost badge, and a notice that it was booking quickly. In the background of the third photo, barely visible at the tree line, was a dark shape that could have been a shadow, or could have been something else entirely. Maya closed her laptop and pulled out her phone. She needed to warn Jordan, Ethan, Casey, and Liv, but when she opened her contacts, their names were gone. All of them, as if they'd never existed at all.